Brazil's 2026 World Cup project is suddenly becoming far more emotional, controversial, and dramatic than anyone expected. Because according to multiple reports surrounding Carlo Ancelotti's Brazil plans, Neymar Junior could still return to the national team for the World Cup. But here's where the story becomes truly complicated. Reports are now claiming that if Neymar officially returns to the squad, at least one talented young player could lose his World Cup dream immediately. And honestly, while reading all these reports, another question started coming into my mind. If Brazil are seriously thinking about bringing Neymar back, then why shouldn't Thiago Silva also be seriously considered? Especially when Brazil's defensive line still looks unstable in several areas. Today we are going to openly discuss 5 important names connected to Brazil's World Cup future. Some fans will agree, some fans will disagree, but one thing is certain: Carlo Ancelotti now has some extremely difficult decisions ahead of him. First, let's begin with Neymar Jr., because whether people like it or not, Neymar's name changes everything inside this Brazil squad discussion. The moment Neymar becomes available, the entire attacking structure suddenly changes. And according to the reports, the 2 players who could potentially suffer because of Neymar's return are Santos and Joao Pedro. Now, the important thing to understand here is that Neymar is not being considered as a midfielder inside Ancelotti's system. Naturally, Neymar would be considered as part of the forward line or attacking setup, which means if somebody loses a place because of Neymar, the biggest risk probably falls on Joao Pedro. That's where this conversation becomes really interesting, because if Joao Pedro misses out, then who exactly replaces him inside the attacking rotation? And honestly, there are already 2 names that fans can clearly expect to enter the discussion immediately. One is Endrick, the other is Thiago. Both players are already highly rated, and both bring different qualities to the squad. On top of that, Carlo Ancelotti also has another very strong option available in Matheus Cunha. And if you have watched Cunha recently, you already know he can offer movement, pressing, creativity, and finishing all together. He is one of those forwards who can completely change the rhythm of a match. But then another complication appears. Flamengo's Pedro is also being seriously monitored. So now think about this situation carefully. If Joao Pedro does not get selected, then Flamengo striker Pedro could potentially receive that opportunity instead, which means suddenly Brazil's forward line becomes overcrowded with options. Neymar, Endrick, Thiago, Matheus Cunha, Pedro, Joao Pedro. Too many names fighting for limited positions. And this is exactly why the reports are suggesting that somebody important may have to sacrifice their World Cup place if Neymar returns. Now personally, this is where I slightly disagree with some of the media narratives, because when it comes to Santos, I genuinely believe Brazil should prioritize the midfield future more carefully. Santos is not just another young talent. He is the type of midfielder who can become extremely valuable for Brazil over the next several years. Giving him early World Cup exposure could become a massive investment for the future of Brazilian football. The experience, the pressure, the mentality, the atmosphere, these things matter enormously for a young midfielder's development. So from my perspective, if Brazil are forced to choose between sacrificing midfield depth or sacrificing one attacking option, then maybe protecting Santos makes more long-term sense. But even after saying all that, I still believe Neymar changes the equation completely, because at the end of the day, this is Neymar Jr. we are talking about, not just another footballer, not just another famous name. We are talking about arguably the biggest Brazilian football superstar of the modern generation, a player who has carried Brazil emotionally for years, a player who still creates fear inside every defense when fully fit, a player whose creativity alone can decide massive matches. So honestly, trying to create complicated equations about who should stay or who should leave because of Neymar almost feels unnecessary at this stage. If Neymar is fit, motivated, and physically ready, Brazil will take him. Simple as that. Then the remaining decisions become Carlo Ancelotti's responsibility. Who stays, who leaves, who sacrifices their dream, that is ultimately the coach's decision. Now let's move toward the defensive side, because honestly, this is where Brazil's biggest concern may actually exist. And unfortunately, the absence of Éder Militão still hurts badly, because Militão is not just a normal defender. He gives Brazil flexibility, aggression, speed, recovery ability, and versatility all at the same time. A player who can operate centrally, cover spaces, help the right side, and completely transform defensive balance. When a squad has a player like Militão available, coaches naturally feel safer. But without him, Brazil's defensive structure suddenly feels more vulnerable. Yes, Marquinhos is still there.
Yes, Gabriel Magalhaes can still provide stability. Both players are expected to remain starters, but Militão's absence removes a completely different type of security from the squad. And this is exactly why Thiago Silva's name keeps returning into the conversation again and again. Now, before anybody misunderstands this discussion, let me make something clear. Nobody is saying Thiago Silva should automatically start every game. Nobody is saying Brazil should become dependent on a veteran defender again. But when Carlo Ancelotti himself publicly praises Thiago Silva's current condition, then naturally people will start taking this possibility seriously. Ancelotti basically said that the way Thiago Silva is still performing makes it hard to even believe his actual age. And honestly, that statement alone tells you everything. Because elite coaches do not casually praise older defenders unless they genuinely trust what they are seeing. Think about it carefully. Thiago Silva has maintained his fitness unbelievably well. His positioning remains elite, his leadership remains elite, his mentality remains elite. Even now, wherever he plays, he still contributes massively toward organization and winning mentality. And perhaps most importantly, Thiago Silva still gives confidence to the players around him. That quality cannot always be measured statistically. Sometimes leadership itself becomes a tactical weapon during major tournaments. And let's be honest about one thing. During previous World Cups, whenever Thiago Silva was on the pitch, Brazil's defensive line usually looked calmer, more disciplined, and more organized. He became a symbol of reliability for the team. So when you combine his leadership, experience, current fitness, and Ancelotti's praise together, suddenly the idea of taking him to the World Cup no longer feels emotional only. It actually starts sounding logical. Now, this brings us toward the most controversial part of the discussion. Two names, Danilo and Alex Sandro. And honestly, this is probably the section where many Brazil fans will strongly agree. Because if Brazil are seriously considering squad balance, then one difficult question must be asked. Why exactly should Danilo and Alex Sandro remain automatic selections at this point? Especially when their recent performances have not been convincing enough to silence criticism. Let's start with Alex Sandro first. Personally, if Brazil are discussing left-back depth, I would choose Carlos Augusto ahead of Alex Sandro almost immediately. Carlos Augusto simply offers more energy, more consistency, and stronger recent performances. If Alex Sandro stays only as an emergency backup option, maybe that can still be understood, but as a guaranteed selection, that becomes harder to justify. Then comes Danilo, and this is where the debate becomes even stronger. Yes, Danilo is versatile. Yes, he can play multiple defensive roles. Yes, coaches usually appreciate experienced, versatile players in tournament football. But the real question is simple. If Brazil already lacks strong central defensive leadership after Militão's injury situation, then wouldn't replacing Danilo with Thiago Silva actually make more footballing sense? Personally, I genuinely think it would. Because imagine this scenario. You ask Brazil fans one simple question. Would you rather take Danilo or Thiago Silva to the World Cup right now? Honestly, probably 99% of fans choose Thiago Silva immediately. Finding the remaining 1% might actually become difficult. And the reason is simple. Thiago Silva still looks like a player who can influence matches mentally and tactically. Meanwhile, Danilo and Alex Sandro have struggled badly to maintain convincing form consistently. In many matches recently, their performances have created more anxiety than confidence among supporters. And this is where frustration among Brazil fans starts becoming visible. Because sometimes it feels like certain players continue receiving automatic opportunities regardless of form. Meanwhile, other players perform brilliantly and still struggle to receive proper chances. Naturally, when fans see this happening repeatedly, emotional reactions appear. Some supporters even start joking that maybe certain players secretly have something powerful protecting their positions inside the national team setup. Obviously, that part is just fan frustration and humor, not something to take seriously. But it shows how confused and disappointed many supporters have become regarding squad selections. Because football fans can accept mistakes, fans can accept tactical failures, fans can even accept losing matches sometimes. But what becomes difficult to accept is when performances clearly decline, yet certain names continue remaining untouchable. That creates frustration before the tournament even begins. Instead of excitement, supporters start feeling nervous every time the defensive lineup gets announced. And honestly, this is why Thiago Silva's situation feels so important emotionally. Because unlike some aging players who visibly decline physically, Thiago Silva still looks competitive. He still looks hungry. He still looks disciplined. Most importantly, he still looks capable of helping younger defenders during difficult moments. Tournament football is not only about speed and physicality. Experience matters enormously. Communication matters enormously. Leadership matters enormously. And Thiago Silva still brings all of those qualities naturally. At the end of the day, Carlo Ancelotti now faces an incredibly delicate balancing act. Neymar's return could change Brazil's attacking structure completely. Young talents like André Santos, Joao Pedro, Endrick, and Igor Thiago are fighting for life-changing opportunities. Meanwhile, the defensive line still carries uncertainty, especially without Éder Militão fully available. And inside all this chaos, Thiago Silva's name continues growing louder among supporters. Personally, if Brazil decides to keep one of Danilo or Alex Sandro while also bringing Thiago Silva, I would fully support that decision. In fact, I think it would be one of the most logical options available right now. As for Neymar, honestly, that chapter already feels decided emotionally. When the player involved is Neymar Junior, discussions about sacrificing another squad player almost become secondary. Because players like Neymar are not judged only by statistics. They are judged by aura, influence, pressure, experience, and the ability to create unforgettable moments when the world is watching. So now the real question is no longer whether Neymar and Thiago Silva deserve consideration. The real question is whether Carlo Ancelotti is brave enough to make the controversial decisions necessary to maximize Brazil's chances at the 2026 FIFA World Cup. And that answer, we will probably discover very soon. What do you think? Should Neymar return no matter what? Should Thiago Silva replace Danilo or Alex Sandro in the squad? And which young player deserves protection the most before the World Cup begins? Let me know your thoughts below. And as always, we'll meet again in the next video. Until then, take care and stay safe.